If you're thinking of buying classic hi-fi speakers, this video could save you some expensive mistakes. I know because the mistakes I made when I bought these classic 60s British speakers. These looked fine when I bought them, but one hidden issue turned a bargain into a mistake. Speaker technology hasn't changed that much over the last 70 years, so classic or vintage hi-fi speakers can be a great bargain. But when I got mine home and connected them up, they sounded awful, and fixing them added 50% to the cost. So I'll tell you how you can avoid the same mistakes. So, classic hi-fi speakers, to buy or not to buy? So this video is about whether you should buy classic or vintage hi-fi speakers and how to buy them in person or online. It's not about the best classic speaker. There's lots of opinion and content on that, and ultimately it's a personal choice that depends on your situation. I'm sure many won't agree with my choice, and that's fine. So we'll go over the pros and cons of buying old speakers, what to ask, what to check, and when to walk away. And I'll show you 6 simple checks that can help avoid disasters without needing to become an audio engineer. I'll also cover some simple fixes for common problems. Okay, so should you even buy vintage hi-fi speakers? Let's have a quick look at the pros and cons. You can skip this if you want, but there's some important things I learned the hard way. All right, let's go. Okay, so first let's talk about the reasons you should buy vintage hi-fi speakers. So number 1 is value for money. Like most things in life, hi-fi gear loses a lot of value over time, so vintage speakers are generally much cheaper than new ones, so you're getting a lot of performance for very little money. My Leak Mini Sandwich speakers cost the same today as they did in 1969, about £60. If you saw the previous video, see the link here, I couldn't have afforded them when they were new. The equivalent cost now would be about £1,500. And they're very unlikely to lose value. Often values actually rise as more people get into buying hi-fi. So you're getting £1,500 speakers for £60, just 55 years late. So next, quality. Speaker design, as I say, hasn't really changed that much over the last 70 years. There have been some improvements in driver design, but generally speakers work the same way today that they did in 1960. And in some ways things have got worse. Modern speakers are often made with plastics that age, discolour and become brittle, foam surrounds that degrade, and even quality modern speakers are value engineered to last a finite time. Speakers from the 60s and older were from a time before all this started, so they last and they're easy to fix if something does go wrong. Next is reliability. Speakers are really pretty simple, so there's a lot less to go wrong compared to amplifiers and tape decks. The things that do age, most likely capacitors, are generally very reliable and importantly are easily replaced. So vintage speakers don't contain complex electronics or features that will be out of date in a few years. The less there is to go wrong or become obsolete. Next is serviceability. Most vintage speakers are easy to work on. There's lots of information online and they're made with easily replaceable parts like capacitors, wiring, grill cloth and a bit of woodworking. So fixing problems is generally pretty easy. A bit later I'll go over how to fix some of the more common issues. And next is sound quality. Now I'm also going to mention this as a potential downside in a minute, so it's a bit contentious, but hang on a minute. Generally, vintage speakers were designed to be as natural sounding as possible. Many manufacturers actually did live versus recorded promotional events. So you should be buying some very natural sounding speakers that work well with most amps and in most rooms. Also, vintage speakers were typically designed to work with amps that had less power than modern ones, so they sound good with low or medium power transistor amps or even valve amps. Next is aesthetics. How much hi-fi gear from 20 years ago looks dated today? I'd say most of it. So new speakers today will probably look dated a few years from now. I'd argue it's better to buy something that's already a classic and fits with your style. It can't become dated because it's already dated. And natural materials like wood will age much more gracefully than plastics. Okay, so now let's look at some reasons not to buy vintage speakers. So first is that they're old, so problems will happen. Foam surrounds can rot, speakers can sag, adhesives can fail, terminals corrode, cabinets split, veneers lifts. There's a long list of things that can go wrong. As I covered in the restoration video, perhaps the most likely issue is that crossover capacitors age. All these things are repairable, but you need to be prepared for them. Next one is that you might be buying someone else's bad repairs. Often, worse than aging, fixing someone else's poor workmanship is annoying at best. Wrong replacement drivers, cheap or badly soldered capacitors, bodged refoams, miswired polarity. Some bodged repairs are hard to spot and fix. I'd much rather fix an original untouched speaker. The next one is that technology has progressed. Although speakers are basically unchanged from 70 years ago, probably one of the biggest improvements has been high-powered magnets. These allow smaller speakers to move more air and do so at lower frequencies. So modern speakers generally create more bass than vintage speakers. Linked to that is that consumer tastes have changed. Not only do newer speakers generally create more bass, we've also become used to heavy bass equaling good sound. So today's speakers are tuned to deliver more bass. Particularly if you buy smaller vintage speakers like the Leak Mini Sandwich, commonly called bookshelf speakers, you'll need to accept this or be prepared to force more bass with the tone controls or even add a subwoofer to extend the bass performance. Okay, so now we've been through the pros and cons, let's get to the practicalities of buying both online and in person. So the first thing is to do your homework. Now I'm going to assume you already know what speakers you're looking for. If not, there's lots of opinion online and there isn't time to get into that now. I chose Leak speakers because I like Leak equipment generally. I like the look of the speakers and I like the company history and the interesting technology they used. But you can choose whatever you want. When it comes to buying, it's a really obvious thing to say, but the first thing to do is to get an idea of price. The easiest way is to look on eBay and filter by sold items. Obviously, if you're buying from a dealer, you'll pay more than from someone selling Uncle Jim's speakers that have been in the loft for 40 years, but it can be worth it for peace of mind. There are lots of online forums with people much more knowledgeable than me, and these are incredibly useful for finding out common problems, their fixes, and opinions on your chosen speaker. Look out for forums like audiokarma.org and vintageradio.net. I've learned so much from them, and I'll put links in the description. So, before we get to the checklist, including the 6 easy tests that will help avoid the worst mistakes, let's just talk about online auction listings. One thing I've learned is if the listing says an item is untested, you need to factor that into your price. Most people are honest, but it's also quite easy to sell something that you know has issues as untested. It's safest to assume the worst. Also, check the photos to see what the terminals are for connecting the speaker cables. A lot of British manufacturers like Leak used a connector that's not available new and is quite rare and expensive to find second hand. It's worth checking if these are included. Also, check if they're collection only, because speakers are big, heavy and expensive to post. If you're going to have them sent by post, ask how the speakers will be packaged. You want a big box with lots of padding. I only looked at listings within driving distance of home and I went to collect them. Collection only can mean you get things cheaper as there's fewer buyers who'll be interested. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual speakers and what to check, including the 6 tests that can help you avoid the worst mistakes. This applies to buying online and buying in person. Obviously, if you're buying online, you can only do the hands-on checks when the speakers have been delivered, but the process is the same. The first thing to check is the speaker cabinet. Is there any splitting or is the wood veneer lifting off anywhere? Water damage and damp is really bad as it's hard to repair, so avoid it if you can. Do the cabinets need refurbishing? If so, deep marks might go through the veneer and be really difficult to repair properly. And the speaker grills, are they fraying, discoloured or damaged? Often you can clean them, but the grills are really important to the overall look of the speaker. Now remove the grills and inspect the drivers. Are there any dents or tears in the speaker cone? Are the dust caps damaged? Even dented dust caps can affect the sound. And is the speaker surround, the bit that flexes to allow the cone to move, in good condition? Some 70s and beyond speakers used foam as the surround, and that can age and rot over time, which isn't an easy repair. Earlier speakers, 60s and before, used fabric, and that seems to last a lot better. Now we'll do a simple check to see if you can expect decent sound. It's not a guarantee, but it's an easy test to eliminate a common problem. What you'll do here is gently push the low range speaker and listen for any rubbing or scraping sounds. Speakers can sag over time, which can cause the magnet and coil to touch. This causes the rubbing or scraping sound, and it will massively affect the sound quality of the speaker. You can expect really high distortion. You can't really do this to the tweeter as they move so little anyway. It's hard to tell if they're rubbing or scraping, but it's worth checking the woofer. It halves the odds that the speaker is okay. If you do hear a problem, sometimes turning the driver upside down in the cabinet can compensate for the sag, but it's a bit of a gamble. Unless they're incredibly rare speakers or incredibly cheap, it's probably not worth the risk. Okay, so before you do anything here, look closely at the speaker terminals. If these are corroded, it will affect the test results. You need to clean them. Quite often you'll need a small wire brush or small power tool with a wire wheel to get 60 years of corrosion off. Be gentle though, you need to minimise any damage to the plating of the terminals or they'll just corrode again much quicker. So the first electrical test will tell you if the speakers are completely dead or if they'll damage your amp. This is great if you have a multimeter. Even the cheapest one will do the job fine. I'll also cover a test you can make without a meter. You just need a battery. So if you have a multimeter, use it to measure the resistance across the speaker terminals. Now speakers are normally rated 4, 8 or 16 ohms. That's called a nominal rating as it's an average across the frequency band. It will actually change at different frequencies. Quite often speakers will measure 30 to 60 ohms around the bass response, 6 to 10 ohms through the mid-band, and then it can rise much higher at high frequencies. The correct term here is impedance, which is the equivalent of resistance but for an alternating signal like music. But if your multimeter will only measure DC resistance, the readings will be a little bit different to the nominal rating. Typically, a 4 ohm speaker will measure 3 to 3.5 ohms DC. An 8 ohm speaker can measure 5 to 7 ohms typically, and a 16 ohm speaker often measures 12 to 14 ohms DC. What you're looking for here is a measurement close-ish to the nominal rating. If you see 0 ohms, stop. The speakers are shortage and will damage your amp if you connect them. If you see open circuit, that again means you probably shouldn't connect them to your amp, especially if it's a valve or tube amp, which don't like seeing no load. You won't get any sound anyway, there's probably a wire come off inside or some other damage. Now, if you don't have a multimeter, you can do what's called a battery pop test. Get any 1.5 volt battery, just a normal non-rechargeable AA is fine, and briefly touch it across the speaker terminals with a couple of wires. And I mean briefly, you don't want to stress the speaker coils. You should see the speakers move briefly when you connect and disconnect the battery. That means they aren't open circuit and they aren't short circuit. This isn't as good as using a multimeter, but it's better than nothing. If either test fails, you might find it's a simple wiring issue, or it could be a scrap speaker. Don't connect them to your amp though, in case there's a short. It's impossible to tell without a multimeter and getting inside the speaker, so you'll have to decide if the price makes this gamble worth it. So now we've established if you should even connect these to an amp, and if you can expect any sound. So now do a quick listening test. This only needs to be a minute or so if you're buying in person, but if you've bought online, then obviously you can take much longer. It was the listening test that told me something was wrong with my speakers. They sounded harsh and not at all balanced. So in the end, the listening test is the one that really matters. If you think something's wrong, I recommend using a test app on your phone to test the speakers. That's exactly what I did in the end, and the distortion of one speaker was really high. Watch this video, and the link is in the description, to see how I did that. But a word of warning, it takes some time to do, so it's only something you can do when you've bought the speakers. That may be too late, but at least by doing the previous tests, you've done everything you can. So there are a few things you can't expect to test until you get the speakers home and on a workbench. This includes things like measuring and testing the individual drivers. You'll need to get inside the speakers and unsolder them. It also includes testing the crossover. Again, you need to get inside and desolder capacitors. And even with the best test equipment, it's not easy to check capacitors at all frequencies and loads. It was the crossover capacitors that were the issue with my speakers in the end, even though they look fine and tested okay on the component tester I have. So as I said at the start, I'm not telling you what to buy, but we've gone through the process I've learned the hard way about buying vintage speakers. I learned this buying my Leak Mini Sandwich speakers, and repairing them cost 50% on top of the purchase price, plus a lot of time. But the process is pretty simple. 1. Do your homework. 2. Take your time when buying online. 3. Do some visual checks when buying. 4. Do a push test. 5. Do some electrical tests. And then 6. Listen to them. Only you can decide what's a good deal, but the speaker checks I've outlined should help you decide, help you avoid paying too much for something that needs work, and avoid any nasty surprises. So, thanks for watching. If you want to see the restoration video of my speakers, click here and the link's in the description. I'll see you in the next video, which will be a one-off visiting Audiojumble 2026, the UK's largest second-hand vintage hi-fi event. It's held every year in Crawley, and I'll be there on the 8th of March. After that, I'll be restoring my Leak Stereo 20 valve amp. That'll be worth watching, so subscribe so you don't miss it. As always, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Corrosion.